pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The district mission statement. The mission of the Exeter West Greenwich Regional School District is to empower students to dream, reach, and succeed. Open forum. It's 3-minute time limit for individual, 15-minute maximum time allowed for open forum. Comments must be directed to the chairperson of the school committee, who may limit or terminate a discussion. No comment should address personnel, litigation, or negotiations as restricted by the open meetings regulations. The school committee cannot take action or vote on topics introduced that are not reflected on the agenda. We have anyone who would like to speak? Is anyone raising their hand? Sure.
I don't see anyone.
We're going to then do the senior high school presentation.
So we'll turn it over to Principal Sue Chandler and Assistant Principal Chris Anthony, who will facilitate the presentation for you.
Hi, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for having us here tonight. We're looking forward to highlighting some of the things that are going on at the high school. There's always so many things going on, and we're happy to have some of the kids here tonight, as well as some of the teachers to highlight. First of all, I'd like to, point out the cookies and the goodies there. We have some Oreo truffle balls and some chocolate chip cookies that our culinary arts students baked today freshly for you. We provided. They were excited to share those with you tonight. Excuse me. Okay. So while Mr. Anthony is getting that set up, I'd like to introduce Mrs. Lennon Malash. She's one of our science teachers. She's also the head of our sustainability club, although this is not our sustainability club. But Mrs. Malash leads an awful lot, wears an awful lot of hats and leads a lot of things. And she's here to, proudly speak to you about some of the things, the efforts that the students and she are doing in regards to sustainability efforts. I guess I can put it that way. So this is Mrs. Malash, students, and
It's a great opportunity to speak to all of you today about some exciting things that our science students are involved in here at EWG, particularly the Sustainability Club, which has been, I think we're in our 3rd year now. And this was a student club. They came to me and said, this is what I'd like to do. Would you be interested in advising us? And I said, sure. What do you want me to do? What would you like to do? And I'm extremely impressed with some of the things that they have developed. I have 2 students here. I have Fiona Brandt, who actually was named by the Rhode Island Environmental Educators as Environmental Student of the Year, and John Kaminsky, who are both of them are here representing the Sustainability Club. And they're going to talk to you specifically about the waste reduction efforts that we undertook this year. I think some of the things they're going to share with you is it was a lot bigger than we thought. There were some roadblocks. We think we've come up with ways to overcome that, but I'll have them talk to you about what they've done so far. Fiona, John?
So hi everybody, I'm Fiona.
I'm John Kaminsky.
We're going to be talking about the waste reduction program, I would call it, that we've been implementing at school recently. So the extent of our work, as a group, we did a project to help our school become more environmentally conscious. Ms. Millar came to us talking about how she wanted to create this program that we would do during lunches that consisted of recycling and composting all of the food waste and all of the plastic that we would just throw in the landfill originally. So on November 19th, we informed the school about how this project will be launched and why it is so important. And we actually began the project, I would say early December. Today, we're presenting data on our progress to date and also what we learned along the way.
All right. So why does composting and recycling matter? Well, to begin, the Rhode Island landfill is located in Johnson. It's projected to be full as of 2035. Collectively, Rhode Island schools send about 5 million pounds of food waste to landfills each year. And starting in September of 2021, all schools were required to have a waste migration plan in place. Mitigation, my apologies.
So this is the landfill data that we've been gathering since like right when we started this program. And as you can see, we were weighing the landfill to be almost like just under 600 pounds being sent to Johnson. And then it's a decrease right when we start, which looks amazing. And there's also an increase right around mid-February, late February, that we're going to talk about later, but it was an issue with our recycling company when they weren't allowing milk cartons to be recycled anymore.
So this is the composting data. Overall, as you can see, we started at about 300 pounds, and then it goes down a little bit, and then continues to come back up and stays at a pretty stagnant area. This really varies depending on what the meals are during the week and as to what students want to eat. Because some days they eat the entire meal, and some days they don't really like it as much and don't feel the need to finish it.
So as for recycling, doing pretty well overall, especially in the very beginning of this process. But then starting on February 28th, we found out that we couldn't recycle milk cartons, and that was such like a major part of our recycling. So we weren't really sure what to do. It lasted about like, I'd say a week of just like having to throw away all the milk cartons. And then we also just had to stop it altogether because there was like miscommunication about what like we can and cannot recycle. And to this day, we've decided to recycle all plastic and all bottles, but not milk cartons. So that's definitely it's been very difficult to get the weight of the recycling back up, but obviously we've done it and we're doing pretty well right now. So it's good.
So to begin our program, we had a couple of things needed. To get these points of data, we needed a scale to weigh each individual bag of trash, recycling, and compost. We needed reusable gloves. We found it was not very fun digging through the trash and recycling to find anything that it couldn't go into recycling. It wasn't fun without gloves. And just reusing plastic latex gloves wasn't very effective or sustainable way of doing so. And then composting bags, which are like soy-based bags that can be biodegraded and aren't going to injure the environment in any way. And that's required for us to use by Blackbird Composting. Otherwise, they won't accept our compost in any other kind of bag. In addition to that, the compost collecting by Black Earth Composting costs $128 per month. And these are our overall starting costs and monthly costs of the composting program we have here.
So all of the totals as of the composting total, we have saved 1,739.65 pounds of compost from the trash. And that's a mix of the lunchroom, the kitchen, and the culinary rooms where they cook all of they cook the food you have today. Recycling, we get 567.69 pounds out of the landfill, and the total amount of trash we collected was 2,074.14 pounds. And you can also think about it as the composting and recycling combined. That's how many pounds we've taken out of the trash. So that was a 50% reduction in what is going to the landfill from the high school cafeteria. And based on data collected prior, our trash total from November to March 21st would have been 5,000 pounds of landfill.
So what we learned overall from this experience so far is that composting and recycling is very complicated. The cafeteria trash could be reduced further by using reusable trays. But this requires people to wash such trays, which is another conversation for a different time. Should start in preschool, as we believe if we start at an earlier age, this will become an easier and more just second nature thing for students, as a lot of them don't know where to put specific items. This club has a very hard time being sustained purely by students, as we don't have the ability to necessarily reinforce where they put the things and just the overall amount of people that want to dig through trash. But there are a lot of people that stick around and do it, which we really appreciate. And if it were not for the PLT block at the end of our day, we would have not been able to do this project at all.
So there's a couple other things that we've done to make our school more eco-friendly. So we have a weekly recycling. I would call it a club. It's sort of a club every like Thursday. And currently the composting PLT has also been collecting and recycling. So like half the kids will go around the school, get all the recycling, the other half will go to the lunchroom and take care of the compost. And we have 3 boxes for plastic bag collection. So like at grocery stores, where you put your grocery bags, we have 3 of those stationed around the school. And we've collected 124 pounds since January, and we make it into Trex stacking.
Have any questions for us?
It just gets sent to a company. What was it called?
Yeah, it's called Blackbird Composting.
Blackbird
They
Composting.
service Massachusetts and Rhode Island, so it's a large-scale commercial composter.
So we collected it then.
They come and pull, yeah, just like trash. And then in the end, they will give the organizations that are composting some of that compost back that we can sell, like in a greenhouse sale or sell to the community to recoup some of the costs. Yeah, we can't really do it here. We don't have the equipment or the space to do commercial composting.
So have you found that you are applying anything that you're learning in your classes to this project at all?
I could say we are. We learn a lot about such things as like biology and the biodegradation of different materials. And I'm in the agriculture pathway, so I've taken a lot of the agriculture courses available at the school. And we talk about a lot of sustainability, and like, for example, animal science, which Millard teaches, and the reusages of food that we can't necessarily eat, but our livestock can, and just overall using this food and food waste, not in trash, but to maintain and improve our current living section.
Really impressive presentation and project, and the fact that you've taken this on, you know, a student-driven initiative says a lot. Great job.
I think the biggest thing moving forward is one of the plans was for the kids to kind of package it and then be able to take it to the different buildings. And then whoever would take it on at those different buildings, these kids would train them based on what they learned.
It's not a glamorous job, and I tell you, I have to give these kids, it's gross. Yeah, but you know what? They are truly so dedicated to being good global citizens, I think. And they're, you know, they're our future. They take it really serious. Yeah, they do. They do. Yes. Yep. They're a very dedicated group. So we appreciate all the work that they've done. It's an amazing amount of work.
And plus, I don't know the figures, but it's been on the announcements. The class of 2019 donated the refillable, the machines at all of the water fountains. And it was amazing how many thousands of water bottles have been saved since they put in those reusable filters. So that blew me away. I didn't realize it was that much.
Yeah, they keep a running, machines keep a running count of how many bottles. So as you're filling it up, it'll count the bottle.
We're a small state, and we certainly have a small landfill, so you know, we definitely have to make the best use of it. Preserve what we have. So thank you guys for coming. And thank you so much. So next up, we have Mr. Robitaille, he is in ELA department chair. I mean, we know that the, one of the, of course, the most important things we do is to educate the students on. And the test scores always are important to us. It's been a difficult couple of years, and I have to say, both our department chairs, I have Natalie and LA here, have done a tremendous amount of work in spite of it to try to keep our students so that they are prepared, and that they still, we usually end up looking very well and leading in our state. So I will turn this over to Mr. Robitaille so as we get our slides ready to go here.
All right, so sorry to have to follow up a really interesting environmental presentation with testing data. But here we go. I have 3 graphs to share with you today. The first one is the right graph test. And everything that I'm going to say, point out about this test is actually a trend that you'll see in all 3 of the tests. Right? So first of all, and this really shouldn't come as any surprise. EWG is always ahead of the state curve in every year on testing. I'd also like to point out that you look at students who are not exceeding or not meeting expectations in the red on the left-hand side. That's always a fraction of the students on the state average. So we're happy about that. You'll notice also we had growth if we compare 2017 and 18 going into 2018 and 19. We saw some really nice growth in the number of students who were meeting or exceeding expectations. We went from 42.6% to over 53%. Then 2020 came along. We all know that there was learning loss due to the pandemic. I'm not going to dwell on that, but one thing I also like to point out is you look at the number of students who were tested in 2020 and 21, and that's a challenge that we went from testing nearly every student down to only 91%. So unfortunately, these numbers aren't going to give us the most reliable snapshot of our student population. But even so, we're glad to see that we're still ahead of the state in the number of students who are meeting or exceeding expectations by a very wide margin. And certainly now we're finally now getting kind of a degree of normalcy back in our school. So we're hoping to continue that upward progress that we saw prior to the pandemic. Now as we go into our next slide, we're looking at our PSATs. And everything that I said about the RICAS holds true here as well. So we're ahead of the state averages by health margin. And also, again, if you look at students not meeting expectations, it's a very small fraction of those we see in the state averages. I'd also really like to point out, if you look at the 2018-19 numbers for EWG, our students were actually more than twice as likely to exceed expectations as students statewide. So that's something to be proud of. And also, even going into 2020 and 21, that difficult year, again, it's not the best sample because our testing numbers were down, but again, students were more than 50% more likely to exceed the standard in EWG than the rest of the state. That's encouraging. But again, now that we're getting back to a degree of normalcy, we hope to continue that upward trend that you saw prior to the pandemic. One more testing slide to share with you, that's the SAT. Everything I said about RICAS and PSAT holds true here as well. Which repeats all those trends. Our students on the RICAS were much less likely to be below expectations, state averages. And we saw some nice upward growth before the pandemic, from 68.3% in 2017-18, going up to 73%. So that's a 5% jump. And even during the pandemic year, this is really encouraging to see. Again, our students were nearly twice as likely to exceed the standard that year. So we think we've got a lot to be happy about. A lot to be happy about here. We go on to the next slide. Obviously, we have reason to be proud, but we want to continue to make progress, continue to improve. So just wanted to outline a few things that we're looking to implement in coming years. So first of all, this year we're implementing a new curriculum that last year we spent a year researching the curricula that were on Rhode Island's high quality curriculum list. And the one we chose is Pearson by Perspectives. We like it for a lot of reasons. One of them being that it offers a really strong standardized testing preparation, which I'll tell you more about in just 1 second. Also, collaboratively with the math department, Robin will mention this as well, no doubt, we're preparing to offer an SAT prep elective course in our next school year. So students will be able to prepare for both English and math SAT. And we have really tried to leverage our personal learning time to actually continue to prepare students for the SAT. So we've had an SAT prep PLT, for example, and there's something else too that I'm going to share with you at the end, but maybe we can just go on to the next slide. And I wanted to share with you a little more detail about our new curriculum and how it prepares students for the test. So what you see here is a typical question you can see on an assessment, on a summative assessment in our new curriculum. And you'd have a hard time telling them apart from an SAT question because they look pretty much identical. So what's happening on the left is that students are reading a short story that is a new story to them, just like they'll experience on the SAT. And then on the right, they answer questions about that text. And there are two-part questions. So part A asks the students to interpret the passage. And in this case, they're describing the narrative point of view of the passage. So then in part B, they actually have to use evidence from the text to justify their conclusion. These are SAT skills. So our goal is to use this type of assessment so the students are very familiar with the landscape. So when they get to the SAT and these other tests, that they're not lost. We know what they know. We also want them to feel comfortable with the format of taking the test. So they're learning the skills and they're getting acclimated with the test itself. Next slide, please. After students take any kind of formative or summative assessment with my perspectives, they're getting a report like the one you see here, which identifies the skills where they did well, and it also tells them what they need to practice for. So these skills, like for example, analyzing and evaluating arguments, using claims and support, analyzing narrative point of view, comparing informational texts, using phrases and clauses, parallel structure, all of these types of skills are the skills that we're working with every single day in class. It's embedded in the curriculum. And so the goal is they're familiar with the terminology, but they're also practicing these skills on a daily basis. And one more slide. So I wanted to mention our school newspaper, the Mercury. This is kind of my baby. So it was relevant. It was more relevant when I started preparing this presentation because the SAT had a writing component. And this is an effort to try to get students writing in a real world context. It's less relevant now because I understand that the SAT is dropped the writing test, but I decided to just leave it in here anyway because this is just a reminder that of course, we're interested in tests and we're interested in students being able to perform well on a test, but we're interested in more than that as well. So we're teaching kids communication skills. We're teaching them, students are going out and interviewing people in real world contexts. They are preparing stories, they're preparing podcasts and videos, communicating with multimodality. And that is just one of the things that I wanted to mention because I think it's one of the things that makes our school really great. That's all I have for you this evening. Anyone have any questions? Yeah, that's a good question. I don't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head. I could do a little research and. Okay. Yeah, where we go up and down. So it's not consistent year to year.
You or
EWG. It's my recollection.
just so I understand, you reformatted the testing for the curriculum to be structured like the test. You're not teaching to, you're restructuring tests on curriculum.
Well, we adopted a curriculum, are implementing a curriculum this year, which has that benefit that the assessments look like the test. We didn't purchase the curriculum just because it looks like the test. My department does not like the idea of teaching to a test, but
That's why it's a good presentation.
yeah, testing is a reality that we
I understand.
yes.
Can you speak to which of the students are taking the PSAT and SAT? Is it open to all students? Is it open to class or do
Yeah,
they
Chris can
encourage?
do that.
Do they encourage kids to take it and maybe wouldn't?
Yeah.
I'll take that one. PSAT 10 is used as the sophomore state assessment statewide, and the SAT is used as the junior state assessment statewide. There's no, we have no state assessment for freshmen. So grades 3 through 8 is RICAS, break in 9th grade, the SAT, and then SAT.
So basically, all kids,
Yes.
regardless of if they
Yes.
can the first two.
Correct.
I know that the acceptance policy for a lot of universities is starting to shift as well.
It's been shifting slowly for a number of years. Fair to say fewer and fewer schools are accepting it, or more and more schools are dropping it. But basically the trend is moving downward. Still, there are plenty of schools out there that are still requiring it. This does have the added benefit. The students don't have to pay for this round of the SAT. They don't pay for this round of SAT. And the SAT, they can use those scores for college admissions.
Will they pay for that? The SAT prep course that will be offered?
Not through here. If they take one like through CCRI, they'll pay for that. If they take any other administrations of the SAT at any other time, they'll have to pay for that. But this one is free, still has a bonus of being district, can be used for the school application process.
What were some of the other things that you're seeing universities are looking for if they're going away from SATs?
I think they're looking at grades. They're looking at what students are involved in.
They're looking at, there's a big emphasis on rigor. So what is the rigor of the courses that the kids are taking? Are they challenging themselves? That's a big deal.
Of what they're electing to take.
Yes.
Yeah, and they want to, they want to see well-rounded. I know I'm going back at quite a number of years, but a friend of mine from high school was actually rejected from the Naval Academy simply because he never played a sport. He did every band under the sun, but he didn't have a sport on his resume in Naval Academy. So thanks for this. Which is interesting, but that's just kind of part of that well-rounded. They want to see students involved in a lot of different things. They want to see the academic rigor, but they want to see, branching out as well.
Like clubs and
Clubs, community service, outside organizations, basically things that give them different real world experiences beyond just the academics.
I mean, I think it's great that we're focusing on testing, but I think that's what the curriculum speaks to is for those learners who maybe aren't strong test takers, but are strong in the content, this curriculum helps them become stronger test takers so that their scores are reflecting their skills and abilities. But I think it's equally as important that we're providing rich curriculum options and opportunities to advance, their interests outside and inside of the school. So it seems like we're doing a lot of that, and I know we're adding, college prep courses and other options. So I think this is great. It's really interesting to see, and I appreciate what you're, what you're going
It's
for.
it's really my belief, and my department shares the belief that if we teach students to be strong readers and writers, they'll do well on the test. And that's what it's all about. So
I love that you're kind of tuning into their interests as well through the newspaper, allowing them to explore their interests and share those, and realizing that kind of the tool to do that in many ways.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Next, we have our math department led by Mrs. Borges. Mrs. Liqueur is also they co-chair the math department. She could not be here tonight, so Mrs. Borges is representing the department. I'll turn it over to her.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. First, want to start off by saying a lot of what we've been looking at, especially throughout the course of this year, is where we've been, where we are now, and where we're looking to be. The following three stats essentially relay the message of where we were. And I can go into a little bit more detail prior to this even, although it's not on the slide necessarily. We have the data of 2018, 2019, where we had 59% had met or exceeded the standard. And I want to report about that when looking at that particular, those numbers. I want you to consider, as you well know, the idea of the loss of learning that was COVID related. And also, and this is something that primarily math, as opposed to ELA, is witnessing, is that 2018, 2019, interestingly enough, was a paper and pencil test versus what you are seeing, and I am reporting the results of this was a digital test. Doesn't sound quite that important, except that when you think of our students and this math topic, primarily we are teaching paper and pencil. So it brings up a whole different set of how do we help them along to be successful in a digital world when we're also promoting paper and pencil constantly. So with that in mind, the second slide breaks it down according to College Board for the 2021 testing. It breaks it down into 4 topics, 3 of which I have up here. You'll notice that I highlighted our scores, our percentages, and just like ELA, we're happy to report that throughout all of this, we are well above the state average. And keeping in mind that that first line in every situation is we are low, but that's a good thing. Because that is noting the need to strengthen their algebra skills or strengthen the skills in those topics. Specifically, I want to say relative to the first set of information that we are really, really proud as a department of the results there. And we attribute part of it to the fact that as a department, way back when we started block scheduling, we morphed our algebra courses into 3 semesters. And so it brings about a very seamless approach to the development of the skills, the algebra skills that they need. Obviously, there is solid room for improvement. All right, so that goes without saying. We know that. So in addition to the positives that we have seen throughout our analysis, we know that there is room for improvement. And the third slide. This slide just speaks to, and I can read them off to you, the analysis that took place earlier this year. Tanya Lacour, who Mrs. Chandler had mentioned, is the co-chair of the department. She took a large amount of time to assess and analyze every item and every student who took that test. And these are the things that we highlighted that we've looked at. First and foremost, the identification of all items which less than 50% of our students answered correctly. Secondly, identification of all items in which our students' percentage correct was lower than the state percentage. Third, the identification of specific geometry items, and this happens to be one of our weak topics for our students. Fourth, determining if the above mentioned items were taught, and if so, which courses they were introduced or reviewed within. And along with that fourth bullet, I just want to reiterate that in all of these reviews and analyzing of, we took great steps to look at each individual person's completed class prior to the testing, to see what we could see with regard to that as well. And moving on to that, our focus on growth is predominantly with the intent that was set forth in the school improvement plan, which was to raise our scores to a 70% meeting or exceeding the standard. So these are the basic ideas behind what we are moving forward with. First and foremost, revisiting sequences with all members of our department to assure material coverage. And we do that every year just for the purposes of math being so sequential. We want to make sure that if there were oddities, essentially, and there were many oddities in the past 2 years, that those oddities we make sure that we're responding to those. By oddities, I mean in reference to the distance learning and what may or may not have been gaps that occurred. Also the hybrid learning and gaps that occurred within that. And finally, absences. And we cannot deny the fact that there were absences among our department members as well as among the students. And any of those absences furthermore counteract the sequencing that we're trying to touch upon. Adjustments were made to optimize teaching and reteaching of materials noted as weaknesses. And we are very much looking at incorporating more SAT prep problems in math courses. We've done that before, so that again is nothing new. And by that I mean additional to the curriculum that is usually presented. We add additional SAT prep problems so that they get some practice. What we noted in our analyzing was that the material sometimes was covered, but it wasn't covered and assessed in a way and a style of questioning that they were used to. So that brought up a whole new discussion about how we present some of our test questions and assess the material. And lastly, as well, no, not yet, creation of a math SAT prep PLT. So this year, because we had the luxury of the nighttime, and within that nighttime, probably around the middle of January, I believe, we started to offer our math SAT prep. And that was attended by 24 students in its first session. It is now running another first session and the second session. And that one, we reported having more than 10 of the first session people come back for more. So there is an interest there. Secondly, as Mr. Robitaille had mentioned, we are requesting to run a new SAT prep course in conjunction with the ELA department. And this, again, has always been an interest of ours, and I think if you asked students, it is an interest of theirs as well. But specifically, we're looking at, this would be very beneficial if we could get it to run in the third quarter, or the third quarter, because that would give them ultimately enough prep right before April testing would happen. Finally, and this is a biggie that, again, we started just this year. Members of the department got together, analyzed the RIPAS scores, analyzed the iReady scores that we asked the students to take at the beginning of the school year. And we utilized that data to select a group of freshmen and sophomores who were scoring 3 levels or more below grade level at the time we identified them. We're putting them in front of a math teacher from the department 2 days a week for 40 minutes at the end of the day. And I'm happy to report that we already have 2 people that have successfully made, on the second round of iReady testing, they have successfully made it to grade level. So we have 2 people that are already out of the program and moving forward. And we have checked out where they are at in their coursework as well, and they have been successful in that as well. So moral of the story is we're working hard to, and we're committed, as ELA has said to you as well, we're in the adoption process of our textbook. And we've already seen that there is a good number of publishers out there that are providing you resources, not necessarily, again, are we going to be testing them like the SAT, but it provides us more resources to run with. So, yes.
So I have a question that I legitimately have for you, but before I do, I just want to clarify, because up on the board we see KT, PLT, and I'm imagining that there are people even sitting on the school committee saying, what the heck do those things mean? So nighttime is just what the high school has used to name the last block of the day. This is new to their schedule this year. And it is an opportunity for kids to either receive intervention in skills that they are that they need support in, and that was a response really in part to addressing learning loss. But it is also an opportunity for kids who are not experiencing a gap in their learning to participate in things like the Sustainability Club as an enrichment opportunity. So it serves a dual purpose. And that's something that was new that the high school administration and faculty worked on to implement for this year. So it is being used for a couple of different purposes, intervention and enrichment. And PLT is
Personal learning time.
It's personal learning time. And in that, well, because you're using it almost like a noun, creation of a math SAT prep PLT, it's basically the topic that the kids are participating in during the nighttime block.
They actually elect it. So what we do is we put a survey out to the teachers. What do they want to run after we have already surveyed the students to find out what their interests are. So when they tell us what their interests are, the teachers go to work coming up with ways to engage them in things that are either for intervention or for the enrichment.
Yeah.
And then we survey them again after the period of time to see how they liked it, how we can improve it, what else they would like, and then we run it again. It's been really successful. I think teachers as well as the students have enjoyed it.
I mean, one of the things that I liked, I know it's the first year and there's probably things that we have to work on, right, as we always do. But one of the things that we've finally been able to establish is a set period of time where kids who require intervention work have the opportunity to receive that intervention without being pulled out of another class. Because at the high school, it's super hard to design that time. You know, at the elementary school, all of grade 6 says, we have an intervention, we're going to build intervention into our schedule from, 12:15 to 12:45. And then the 6th grade teachers can move the kids around and support them. We can't do that at the high school because the schedule, kids are all over the place, right? They don't follow the same schedule. So this is really, I think, the first opportunity that we've had to have a set time for that type of focused intervention to occur. So I really am interested to continue to see the growth that you've been able to experience with the kids that you've identified. One of the slides, you talked about geometry being a weak point. Is that historical or is that just recent?
I think it was historical, but that's just a memory. I didn't look into that.
Yeah, I remember it being one of the areas that might have been a little bit lower in comparison. Still higher than the state, but a relative weakness for us. And I'm wondering if you guys have identified any specific reasons why that's happening.
We've looked at adjusting what we cover, because geometry, there's so much
Yeah.
involved in that from start to finish. So we have looked at tweaking that, the curriculum specifically to match. There are things that we have put into quadratics, algebra 1.
Yeah.
There are items that we felt could be positioned in algebra 2 that aren't distinctly geometry, so that we can get to more of the actual geometry pieces that customarily there are things like circles, and the ideas of the relationships between chords, secants, and all of that stuff. And we sometimes have struggled to get to that level.
I think it's fascinating because I think if you really look at the SAT, and maybe it's changed and it's, I'm just throwing it out there as a thought. But the SAT doesn't really focus on certain skills that when you and I were in school in a geometry class, all we ever did was proofs. You know what I mean?
Right.
But the SAT is not proof focused. And so, not that we don't want to take that opportunity away from kids to explore the concept of proofs, but how much time do we spend on proofs, and can that time be better served addressing some of the things that are tested? You know what I mean? Those are just some of the conversations I imagine are taking place. So I'm just kind of throwing that out there.
Jim has stolen most of my thunder. But I wanted to add,
Robin.
I had a very hard time to change.
Point of order, Madam Chair, the school committee members should have precedence over anybody else.
Well, I just wanted to add one quick comment.
Not that is.
Don't go there, Paul. Just don't go there.
Madam Chair, I'd like to rule it right now.
Trigonometry, maybe Tyson, I fully understood geometry when trigonometry was introduced. That's where it all clicked. So,
Excuse me, but we should be letting committee members go first. Oh, all right, Andrea.
Is there a standard curriculum that's used across geometry and algebra? Is that what you're saying, that you have a curriculum that's used for all of the teachers?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, all of our math, the whole math department, if you walk into any algebra linear, it would be the same in, within a day or two, by thinking about the fact that who's in front of you might be a little different and have different needs, but all of us are working off of the same curriculum. Yeah.
And then my second question is, I know you identified that you sort of saw a shift in our performance around the time that the test became digital. Do you have a plan to address that, where students get practice
it's one of those things we bring up, but we know full well, in our opinion, that we have no way of changing it at this point. It's a reality that is presented in that way by the College Board. I'd love to talk separately about an opportunity if there was a way to, because there are several items with regard to the testing. We also have looked, and I know it's no surprise to ELA especially, math always goes second. And it's very difficult, but if you're ever in a testing situation, to think about reading through everything that you had to do for ELA, and then there's math. So, you know, we have several things that we would love to address, but have no way at this point in time that I know of to change those things.
And I think,
They are what they
where
are.
are you guys right now in terms of the math, the new high quality curriculum
We're in the process of piloting next year.
piloting next
Piloting
year?
next year.
So I think that many of the programs that have been identified as high quality from the state also include a robust assessment system with a set of tools that supplement the curriculum.
They do.
So when you guys are piloting, I just, not that I have to tell you this because I know how thorough you all are, but pay attention also to the assessment component, because I think that some of the materials that you'll be piloting may have tools that you're looking for that will allow you to expose kids to the right assessment questions, but they can experience them both in the written format, which they need to do, and also through the digital format, because they should be practicing to mirror the test that they have to take for the SAT.
Absolutely, and we have already started meeting with publishers
Yeah.
About their technology component.
Yeah.
So that is actively being done right
That's
now.
great. And ask the questions, you know, I mean, they may have technology that supplements instruction, which is great, but ask the questions about the technology to supplement the assessment component of the curriculum, because I think you'll find that a lot of the things that you're looking for, you may have at your fingertips. It might just be a variable that you want to consider in what you select, you know?
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, I ask a question.
Yes.
We have not,
We have a math department
Night.
night.
you know, the park.
Yeah.
So the park night is when, say it's Thursday night. Yeah, class from 4. The student doesn't need. The student just go 1:45. Doesn't sound like that for kid, out the cooperation of the teachers. You could be a student's teacher, but you wouldn't necessarily be the department night teacher.
Mhm.
Right, again. So a student can go and say, you don't have a department.
We do not have a night, but
It's
as,
not night, that's important.
It's not an after school.
Immediately after.
Session, yeah.
it's a session that, if I can respond to it based on what you were addressing with KT, nighttime. There are several silent studies, we call them, where students can just pick up and ask for help from a math teacher. They can ask for help from the math teacher that they have currently, or they can go and ask whoever.
I always have trouble with that, because it basically requires the cooperation of the teacher. Say, because I've had this before, right, it's just gets around with that. You have that problem. Say, you have a problem. But the problem is that it says, well, maybe the teacher just wasn't available on that particular day. For that student. But it's the department, interesting. And we're going to stay after for an hour. Doesn't need the scheduled collaboration of the teacher that currently has. You just go to that class. And it's the common practice. I use it all the time. Yeah. Yeah. Right. So it's always kind of nice to have a department. Good question. Serve cooperation, collaboration. Teacher there. Stick around for the student had a problem with a particular issue they had in the day or the week. Common practice throughout that our school department appreciate. That's something.
It almost sounds like the math lab idea at CCRI that they do, that they, where you can drop
the math lab where you go.
Yeah.
Play into. It's more like you get a one.
Yeah.
Is there anything you have to do step in a function that person's tripping over? Set it straight very quickly. Because, you know, I had long.
I will absolutely say that the department is very good about staying after for, on multiple days. Right, so having a designation.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Yeah, thank you for that. Okay.
Thank you. Well, geez, thank you for so much time. I do have one last thing that it's not something that needs to be approved, and I'm not sure. I think you've got a copy of the graduate.
This is the final copy. We had to spend quite a bit of time after our NIAS visit and we received our accreditation because they have now switched to the vision of the graduate. So it pretty much mirrors the same things that we believe in our core values. And I just wanted you to have a copy of it so you can see the final product. I won't go through it all because I know you'll all have a copy that you can take a look at. It's something that, like I said, it does mirror our core values. It's something that we would hope and believe that our students, when they leave here, that they will have these skills and that we will have given them these qualities. And we're hopeful. I truly, I believe too that test scores are a factor for us. I feel like we're a very well-rounded school in some of the offerings that we have, some of the things we provide students, and we're really proud of that. I know that, in speaking, especially to our test scores, because they get so advertised, that I know that we do have a lot of people that are moving into this district because of the rigor and the rankings that we have. And so we're proud of that, but we're proud to have a lot of the other things that we offer too. So please, when you get a chance, take a look at it. Again, I thank you for the amount of time, sorry it took so long, but we're always anxious to come and share. And if you have any questions of me, anybody, as far as what's going on at the high school, I'm more than happy to take questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy the cookies too, by the way.
Okay, we'll continue with the routine items, the consent agenda. Jim?
Yes, under consent, we have the approval of the regular meeting minutes from March 8th. There are no personnel items and no homeschool approvals, so the only other item is the monthly bills.
Does anyone want anything called? Oh, well. Oh, the bill. Okay. Okay, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda with the bills? Second? Second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
They were both nice.
Okay, Paul, the
Yeah,
bill,
I question, for. I saw a charge for a Motorola battery or some such thing. Are those mobile phones like operational? Phones.
Yeah, we have not had the training with the administrators yet. We have them. We have them. We're waiting for the training. And then once we have the training, we'll connect.
But
The police department.
zero problem.
No.
I'll make a motion to accept the bills as presented. All those in favor? Aye.
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 And opposed? Oh. Correspondence, discipline and action.
So this is from the last meeting where I don't remember who asked, maybe Mr. Holdeman. So just to have a 5-year comparison of the various incident titles. These are the titles that are provided by the state. So we have to make sure that whatever incident that we are addressing fits under one of those categories. You can kind of see a comparison over time. And then followed, the 2 pages that follow are the actions, right? So what was the result of, what was the discipline that was imposed? And I just wanted to highlight, again, I don't have a lot to say about it. I just wanted you to see the 5-year trend so that you could, if you had questions, I certainly could look into them for you. But just remember that in 2019-20, there were 3 months where the kids were completely at home. That's when we shut down in March of 2020, or 2.5 months that the kids were, no, roughly 3 months. And then in 2021, we had a significant number of kids that remained distance learning. We had hybrid schedules where half the number of kids were in school on any given day, particularly at the secondary schools. So obviously the numbers are really impacted during those 2 years, but you have 2 years prior to the pandemic impact to look at as well. And I think you'll find in a lot of cases that, that there are some positive trends. I mean, I know at the junior high school, for example, if you look at the total number of incidents in 2017-18 and then work your way backwards to current year, there's a massive decline in incidents. Same thing is occurring at the high school. We had 626 reported total incidents in 2017-18, and that's down to under 200 as of March. Yeah. So if there's anything, take your time to look at it. And if there's anything that you specifically want to address, I mean, I probably don't have the answer because I'd have to look up the specifics about why things were coded a certain way. And, but I can certainly look into it for you. I think this is what you were looking for, so I wanted to provide it for you. Thanks.
And the monthly subcommittee reports, policy subcommittee, building committee. They got it was reported at the last, they haven't met since, and technology committee.
Nothing.
And new business.
None.
None. Unfinished business, the 22-23 budget.
So the only thing new that has happened is last night we had the public forum. We had a small audience, but they asked quite a few questions,
There were more people than ever.
more than ever, but it was still a small audience. We did allow the meeting to people to access the meeting remotely. And I think we taped it, right, so that people can watch it at a later time as well. So we'll see what happens with that. I mean, I think it went well.
5 people have watched it on the internet since last night.
Perfect.
5.
21-22 return to school guide.
So this week, is today Tuesday? Yeah, so it must have been yesterday. Yesterday, I sent something out with the numbers, right? We've had 2 full weeks of school since the mask mandate was lifted. We are, the last 2-week periods, we've had 2 cases per week. The first week, the week prior to that, there were 4, and prior to that, we had 2 weeks of 0. So we are now at 5 weeks with under 5 cases per week, which is really good. We've not seen any significant change at all since the masks became optional. So we'll continue to watch, but so far so good.
And the capital project update.
I'll just say that we're moving forward. The stage 3 schematic design for the roof, the site work, and the general construction have all been reviewed. We're providing the feedback to RIDE. There are some urgent topics that we want to discuss just to keep the momentum of the project going. So I am hoping to schedule a meeting for next Wednesday, 3:30 at 6 p.m.
What is stage 3?
Pardon?
What is stage 3? What's the content?
So stage 3 is the it's the final stage prior to construction, but there are 3 elements to it. There's schematic design, which they review the schematic. That is one set of cost estimates. Then they do the design and development. After they review the schematic, that will present another set of cost estimates. Then they will go to 60% construction documents, which will, they'll review that, and then we'll be ready to go to bid. That's probably, anywhere between a 4 to 6 week endeavor to get to that 60%.
So 6 weeks. That would bring us to mid-May. All right.
Yes.
And then you bring it to bid. What, 30 days?
It could be as low as 21 weeks on the street. No,
So now we're talking the end of May, we're gonna select the contractor. The school committee will select the contractor. And then they
shovels
have,
in the ground July 1st.
what shall I say, in place for like the roof, you're doing the roofs, right?
This summer, we're going to be doing the roofs, the
Yeah.
site.
Yeah, Metcalf, all.
So Metcalf and Wallow will be getting roofs.
Is that asphalt? Do they use asphalt? I've always had this concern about gases on asphalt. And, it'd be, I'm just a neurotic, everybody knows about committee. Half the town does, but I just like to make sure that the roof is done as we take every possible opportunity to get those roofs constructed before school starts in the fall.
Right. So I believe the original question was are they asphalt? No, that was kind of like, I'm assuming they're asphalt, but you
Yes.
say probably not asphalt. So the only gas around here is that. It's coming out.
So they are spec'd as asphalt with an alternate for metal roofs for both schools. So that's how they'll go out to bid. But we're also doing the science labs, the auditorium, gymnasium on the junior high side. The Walloon playground will be done. So we're going to be very busy through the summer and into the fall, that's for sure.
Right. So my original question was getting the roofs done before the beginning.
Yeah, I would say that the roofs will probably be the quickest in and out. Just given the
Didn't we have an
just
extension on that school that line? Have problems getting that wrapped up 1 year.
yeah, that's a EPDM roof. It was done on time. We were just chasing them because of they had to cut in around existing superstructure on the roof where all the air handlers are, and that just created a real issue for them.
So what you're saying is metal, gas, we're in good shape to be completed on the roofs by September or August.
Yes.
Yes, all right. Thanks.
Important dates and meetings. Monday, April 11th will be the all-day referendum. Make sure people out there line up. Then we'll be meeting here at 8:30 to get the results. Tuesday, April 12th, school committee meeting at Elective Elementary School. And Tuesday, April 26th, school committee meeting for the junior high school presentation. Tuesday, May 10th, school committee meeting, that will be a lineup for the lineup presentation. Tuesday, May 24th, just a school. We don't have an executive session tonight, so entertain a motion to adjourn. So second. All those in favor?
All right.
Aye.